morning, everyone. Wow, this room is more packed than I was expecting. That's great. I hope you're all caffeinated and ready for this. We've got a long session for you. Now, before we dive in, let's introduce ourselves. So I'm Michal Amar. I'm a director of engineering and one of the co-chairs for GrafanaCon. I lead what we call the Grafana front-end team, and we're responsible for the core Grafana experience. So if you ever use Grafana to visualize your data or even build a dashboard to share it with your team, then you've experienced our work. And let's be honest, you all have. That's why you're here, right, at GrafanaCon. Now, when I first started using Grafana in 2016, I could not have imagined how far it would go, how much it would evolve and change, or that I'd get yet another opportunity to join you here on stage to talk about the latest major release. It's been an awesome journey, and we have an incredible team as well. So I'm very excited to get to share it with you today with some awesome Grafanistas, such as Mitch.
Oh, I thought she was going to say present company excluded. I'm Mitch Seaman. I'm the Director of Product Management for Grafana. So if you've used Grafana's front end, you've interacted with stuff that Mihail's team works on. And if you've ever submitted a feature request and had it declined, then you've seen what my team can do. In all seriousness, I've actually had a lot of really great conversations already this week with a lot of the people here in the audience. And I get a ton of inspiration from the community at events just like GrafanaCon. It's very exciting to be here. And this is going to be a really packed session. The deep dive means we're actually going to sort of demo and go into the details of a lot of Grafana 12. The people who built these features are presenting a lot of them. So please take a photo of this QR code and ask questions throughout. We're going to have a Q&A at the end.
Today, we're excited to explore the next step in the evolution of observability. It's bold, it's powerful, and it redefines what's possible to do with Grafana. This is Grafana 12. We'll use the next 90 minutes to dive deeper into some of the most important developments of this past year. This year, we're taking a major step forward with observability as code. And I know loads of you are excited because we've spoken about this around the hallway track as well. We're introducing a versioned API for dashboards, a new schema for dashboards, powerful new clients such as GetSync to make managing dashboards as code easier and more reliable than ever. Ryan and Dominic will walk you through how it all comes together. And all of this is made possible by something fundamental. That's the app platform. This is something that we introduced to you last year. It's a complete revamp of our architecture, storage, and APIs, and it's evolving really fast. So Stephanie and JP will join us on stage to talk through how it's evolved recently and where it's going next.
Okay. So yeah, you're hearing us talk about a ton of foundational stuff. The app platform, new APIs, new schemas, and Scenes, which we announced last year, which is our new front-end framework for dashboards. This obviously matters a great deal to us, but we're really excited that this year we get to sort of watch some flowers bloom out of the soil of those foundational features. So Bogdan and Thanos are going to join us afterwards to talk about dynamic dashboards.
And of course, this is Grafana. Our mission has always been clear. We're here to help you keep your systems healthy with the most powerful observability experience in the world. So Mitch and I are excited to show you how we're taking that even further with G12.
And lots of live demos. Before we dive in, I just want to highlight these release stage labels on this slide. This is another good one to take a picture of when you're figuring out what to test out when you go home. So we're going to lean a little bit over our skis here and talk about things that we're actively working on. That's because we really want your feedback as members of the community and people who are comfortable working with Grafana. So just to keep things straight, an experimental feature is one that's under active development, and we recommend testing it out in dev. A preview feature is ready for you to try out in pre-prod, and we really want your feedback. That's the most valuable part of that stage. And GA, or generally available features, are fully supported, and they're ready for use in production. So now with all that said, let's get into it. I'm very excited to introduce you to Ryan and Dominic to talk about redemption. I mean, observability is code.
Hey everyone, I'm Dominic. I'm a software engineer at Grafana. I work on dashboards.
I'm Ryan. I'm not sure if you're more nervous than I am, but we'll see how this goes today. Let us try demo time again. Can we switch over to my laptop? And we'll, oh, that's not it.
Almost there.
It is there. This part's not even me, I swear. Oh, there we go. Great. So we're going to pick up where we were yesterday, and I'm going to show you essentially how I would like to work with my dashboards synchronized in Git. So we have this heat map dashboard. I am going to edit it, and let's change the size and maybe some colors. So we'll edit. I'll change, let's say reds, we'll change to spectral. Oops. Yes. See, you can tell it's real. Save. We're going to push to a new branch and click that off. So what that actually did is Grafana went and wrote that value into a Git repository. It didn't save it locally. So now we can open a pull request based on that, where my value is changed, and I will open a pull request. So that's been committed into, or been written into Git as a pull request, and we're listening for those changes locally, and a webhook takes place and will render an image showing the before and after of what will happen if I merge that. So we can go ahead and merge it. Let's go ahead and merge that guy. And now when I return to my heat map, which we'll just do localhost heat map, we see that this has been updated locally. That's great. That part worked yesterday. So we'll show you another variation here where I am going to go straight back into Git, and from Git, so I've got it, let's say this heat map, and I'm going to edit it directly in Git. You know, most likely you're not actually going to use the GitHub editor to do this, but there's many options you can do. Heat map edited from GitHub. And I will commit this change. So this is writing first to Git directly. And if we look in our history, that's there, and go back to localhost, heat map edited from GitHub. So what I've shown here is essentially two workflows. The initial one is here. I can't help myself with unnecessary data sources to walk through a diagram. But so what I've shown you is as a user writing through the UI into the API, and the next thing that happens is, that is then written first to Git and then into our database. And only after both requests are successful do we return a successful response to the user through the UI. Alternatively, we have a write path that your program people can directly write into Git, get a response into our API where we then synchronize it into the database. The read path is always from our database, so you do not need to be connected to Git for that to work. It's purely the illusion of bidirectional synchronization, but the read is always from our database, and write always goes to Git first. So this strategy is great for me, but honestly, there's many workflows, your CI/CD pipelines this may not be sufficient for that to work. So Dominic's going to show us a new CLI tool that will help us work with that more.
Yep. Thanks, Ryan. I think we need to sync one more repository first, right? To get those slides up and running. So let's see if this works. Because my slides are a dashboard, actually. So let's configure the Git sync first. This time, I'm going to use my repository.
So he is adding a new location. Oops, why is our...
We lost the screen.
Can we keep the screen on the computer? They're having
have a
technical issues. These are not my technical issues today. I'm just going to promise you.
So what we are doing now is actually we're syncing another GitHub repository to another folder, basically. Hopefully that's going to come up.
See, we'll keep this on demo time so you know what's happening here. All right.
Okay, something's happening.
So the piece we're showing is what we did yesterday was an instance that was entirely managed by Git. So every dashboard that you're dealing with was written into Git and then coming back. But there's an alternative form, because I want to pull in dashboards that Dominic just wrote, and I want a folder that's managed from my dashboards and another folder that's managed from a different upstream repository.
Here we go.
So for this, Dominic's configuring a second upstream remote that we're going to pull in his dashboards. Let's choose additional settings, just yes, 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 what could possibly go wrong? And now we've got two remotes. So within this, let's open the one about the deployment
Which one? The deployment ones, right? Yeah. Okay, there we go.
There we go. So what we just showed here is essentially multiple teams with different upstream repositories. So that's one model. But through this, we could clearly imagine, we have a dev environment where you're writing into Git and then staging and eventually production. Alternatively, you may have something where you have a central location with multiple satellite offices that all pull their dashboards and configuration. Again, the nice part of this is that you don't always have to be online for that to work. It pulls it online when you need to and when it's been approved through the various processes.
Perfect. Let's get back to the tooling then.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about 3 tools that we're introducing, actually 2 tools and new dashboard schema. So let's switch back to another dashboard that was just synced from Git. And I should be here, it should be here. There we go. So we're going to talk about 3 things, the Grafana CTL, Foundation SDK, and new dashboard schema. And let's start with Grafana CTL. It's a command line tool that we have developed to simplify interactions with Grafana and Grafana APIs. You can authenticate your users with Grafana CTL. You can manage multiple Grafana instances with it, and resources, obviously. It works from the terminal, so it's fairly easy to integrate it with your existing workflows, or you may have some automation like GitHub Actions that you would like to integrate Grafana CTL with. So with Grafana CTL, you can, for instance, pull all of your resources to your local file system to do a backup, right? Or you may want to pull, let's say, dashboards only, do some bulk edits of those dashboards, and deploy them back without touching Grafana UI. So you can also edit the resources using Grafana CTL, and yeah, this typo is bugging me because it's not Grafana, it's Grafana CTL, not Grafana CTL. So let's try and fix it with Grafana CTL. Okay, I'm gonna use it, and let's keep our fingers crossed that everything goes well. Grafana CTL, resources, edit. And I'm going to provide it with the UID of the dashboard that I'm editing. So in this case, it's, let's see, dashboard-schema, and that's correct. So what happens now, the resource has been fetched, editor opened, and I can start editing it. OK, there's the problem. Let's fix it and save it. It's edited. So let's see what happened. Way better. So this, thank you. So this is the name of the tool that you should remember, not the one with the typo. But the interesting thing here is that this is the dashboard that we just synced from Git, right? I can see the change on my local machine, but I also can see that change on Git. And let's see if that's true. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, just now there's this commit that I've made, and the typo is.
But importantly, whether you're using Git or not, the same command line tools work. So the ecosystem is all working together here.
Precisely. So apart from editing, you may also want to provision your resources from terminal, right? So I have a simple dashboard prepared for this demo. So I'm going to try to provision it, and let's see what happens. This time I'm going to use, I made that typo now. I'm sorry. Grafana CTL, again, resources, but this time resources push, and I'm going to provide it with a path to my file, and I think it's going to be this file. But oops, this didn't work, right? But no panic, this is actually expected. The dashboard that I'm trying to provision is invalid. So why would I want to provision an invalid dashboard? So Grafana CTL, by using the APIs under the hood, is actually preventing me from doing something, let's say, irresponsible. So now I can fix that problem. I think it's this weirdly named dashboard. I can add the title.
So this schema is requiring that we have a title set. And so when he tried to push it, it failed.
Okay, there's a, oh, what's wrong? Oh, there's
You're missing it.
yeah. Up there, it's saved, and let's try pushing it again. Awesome, it's pushed, and let's see if it's really in my instance. Dashboards, yay, it works. Awesome, so this is Grafana CTL, right? I showed you an example how you would manage static files, but that's not always what you want. Like many times you would like to generate your resources programmatically. Let's say you have an API that returns an information about your infrastructure, and based on that information, you may want to implement a code that would generate data source connections or dashboards programmatically. And for that, we have Foundation SDK. Foundation SDK is a set of libraries that are basically aimed at programmatic creation of Grafana resources. It's available in Golang, TypeScript, PHP, Python, and Java. So you can really choose the language that you feel most comfortable with. And the interesting thing about Foundation SDK is that it's not human written. It's automatically generated based on the schemas that Grafana provides. I've prepared a simple example that you're looking at right now over here. I'm a front-end engineer, so I use TypeScript mainly. So I use the Foundation SDK TypeScript SDK. And I can, again, use Grafana CTL to work on this dashboard. So let's see how this works. I'm going to navigate to my demo directory, and I'm going to this time use Grafana CTL resources serve command. Okay, and I'm going to provide it with my TypeScript script that generates those dashboards from the code that I've just showed you. So what happens now? A local preview server has started on port 8080. So I can go to that, to that URL, and I can start working on my dashboard with like real preview, right? So, oh, connection to the service lost. I wonder why. We're going to figure this out later. So this preview, I can now work on this dashboard. So let's fix the no data problem. It's probably a typo again, I suppose. Yeah, let's fix that query. And by the time I'm back to my browser, this preview has been refreshed. And I haven't to do anything. So Grafana CTL watches my Foundation SDK program, basically, and refreshes whenever I need to, whenever I make a change to my.
So importantly, you're working on a piece of code that generates dashboard. You don't really want to push it every time. So this is letting you see those changes more interactively.
Yeah.
So minor changes, you can more quickly see the feedback.
Exactly, and this all happens locally, right? But the connection that you have, the data is actually the connection that is on the target instance that you want to deploy to. So let's assume that I'm happy with this dashboard. I can now run my program pretty much. In my case, it's going to be yarn dev generate manifests. It generates the static files, and those static files is something that I can now push with the command that I've showed you earlier, which is push. And I think it's going to be this one. Awesome. And if we go to my local Grafana, I should have a new folder now. Oh. wrong link, this one. Yeah, Foundation SDK dashboards, and as you can see, this is now deployed. So this is Grafana CTL and Foundation SDK, and this is quite a powerful set of tools to work on your observability as code.
But the elephant in the room here is we keep saying schemas, and I'm sure you're all wondering, wait, what are they talking about? And I've never seen a great schema from Grafana. We know that. We've worked with them too, so we struggle with them. But it's this challenge of we wrote dashboards, 12 years ago, and then kind of have organically added more and more properties. They change over time. Like, we want to do new things. It started off as like kind of an internal implementation, but has become like a really solid public contract that we all struggle with. So when looking at how to support this, it's pretty clear we need to do a pretty major schema-first approach. So with the app platform, with versioned APIs, we're taking the opportunity to kind of establish a new pattern. Can you show us
Absolutely.
that? Okay.
Yeah, so with G12, we are introducing V2 Dashboards API, and what comes along is the new schema for dashboards. Internally, we call it Dashboards V2. I'm going to walk you through 4 major changes that we are introducing with this schema. So the first one is the pattern. It's about how do we express the building blocks of a dashboard. So each building block, name it a panel, has its own kind now and like very precise spec, right? With this, we are not only organizing the schema better, but it also impacts the diffs that are produced by the changes that you make to your dashboards quite significantly. And this is now even more important with the Git sync in the picture, right? It also allowed us to decouple a lot of complexity that was grown organically into the existing dashboard schema. And to give you an example, I'm going to talk about the changes that we are making to the panels. For those of you who have seen the version 1 of the dashboard JSON, you have a panels property, which is pretty much an array of panels, and panels mix concerns of layout, of queries, of visualization options. We are separating those concerns right now. So we are introducing 2 new properties. One is called elements, and the second one is layout. Elements, it's still a collection of the panels that you use, but there is no layout information. All of this information about the visual hierarchy of your dashboard is expressed through the kinds that live under the layout property. This is quite an interesting change, and we're going to hear about it very soon from Thanos and Bogdan, because it allowed us to introduce new layout types, for instance, and some other fancy features like conditional rendering. But that's going to happen soon. Thanos and Bogdan are going to talk about that. Before this, let's see the changes that we are introducing to the panels. Panel is now expressed through panel kind. The spec is, again, quite precise, very precise, actually. We have top-level properties that are common to every single panel, name it transparency, configuration, description, title, etc. Then we have visualization configuration, which is visconfig property, and it has a kind that is a type of the plugin that you want to use. So the specification of the visconfig comes from the specifications of visualization plugins. It's going to be different for bar chart, it's going to be different for time series and text panel, etc. And then there is the third thing that we are changing here. It's the data property. Queries, query options, and transformations, they all live together under a single kind that is called query group. And I want to focus on the fourth thing that is related to queries here. Because this is the model that with this model, we are preparing Grafana for the future, but we also have some immediate benefits thanks to this change. So queries are expressed through the data query kind, and as you can see, there is a group and version properties. Group is the type of the query, a type of the data source that you want to use. Name it Influx, name it Prometheus, right? So with the group and version, we're preparing Grafana to support queries validation in the future. It's going to complement the dashboard schema validation that we're introducing with the V2. But the immediate change that we're bringing with the V2 schema is about the data source references. So in the V2 dashboards, you don't really need to provide explicit data source references for your queries. This has quite a significant impact because it makes dashboards way more portable. You can implement your dashboard once without thinking about the references and deploy it to, let's say, dev, staging, whatever environment. It's one of the, let's say that's one of the deployment models that you Ryan showed, right?
For Git, this becomes really important, obviously, if you have multiple data sources. Exporting dashboards with the explicit reference and then trying to pull them in makes it pretty hard. So currently, this is just pulling, if you have one Loki, you can say, give me the Loki data source. There's more coming in this direction, but aiming to make these more portable.
Yeah. So when you deploy such a dashboard, you don't really have to care whether whether the references across different environments are the same, or you don't have to care about updating those prior to deployment. So yeah, that's the immediate benefit of this change. All right, so let's summarize those changes. We have 4 of those that I discussed. One is the unified structure, better organization of the schema, more user-friendly, easier to reason about. Then we have untangled the complexity that has grown into the existing schema over the years. We introduce new layout property to express visual hierarchy of the dashboard. And with that, we are bringing new layout types and new features to the dashboards. And last but not least is the data source references and more portable dashboards.
Awesome. So this all sounds a little abstract when talking about generic schemas. But to be kind of concrete, let's go back to some of the resources we imported earlier. So here's one that we imported. This is just dashboard legacy. This is the candlestick panel. And this is the dashboard JSON you've seen for years. Like no top-level properties, it's just a dashboard. This will still work. You're not going to have to change everything forever. So don't worry too much about that. But moving forward, we're trying to add versioned APIs to everything. So the top of this, you'll notice there's an API version, dashboards V1. There's a spec element. That spec is actually identical to the dashboard JSON that you've already worked with. There's a schema around it. It's essentially reverse engineered on top of it. But fundamentally, it's just move what was the dashboard JSON now under a spec and have a common metadata wrapper around it. And then moving forward, we have V2. Again, the real difference here, identified there, identified as part of the API version at the top. And the spec in this case is driven by a much more robust schema-first approach, including all the features, all these tabs you've seen, all of the new things we're building. So legacy still works. The API that you've already writing against will continue to work, but we're moving forward for more versioned flavor of this. Interestingly, all of these tools we've shown you, like the Git sync, the CTL, they really work on this generic pattern of having a common metadata wrapper around everything. So in this case, we've provisioned a playlist through this model just based on it having these identifiers. So you can see how this becomes a pretty dynamic system. The power of that is based on the app platform, and we're going to welcome Stephanie and JP. Come on up. Oh, can we switch back to slides?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
They're going to get to the slides, I swear. I swear.
Fingers crossed.
All right.
Sweet. Hello, I am Stephanie, and I'm an engineer on the app platform team.
Hi, and I'm Jean-Philippe. I'm an engineer on the unified storage team at Grafana.
And we're going to be walking you through what has been powering all of the awesome things that you saw from Dominic and Ryan. As you know, the Big Tent philosophy has long been at the heart of Grafana, where you can bring your data, no matter where it lives, all underneath the Big Tent. And we've been working to make the Big Tent even more expandable and easier to build on by transforming Grafana into an observability app platform. This platform will make it so plugins can do a lot more with access to things like auth and storage, but will also make everything underneath the Big Tent much more consistent, resilient, and stable. And in Grafana 12, we migrated some of our key resources, folders, and dashboards onto App Platform to power things like Git Sync and Grafana CTL. Let's dig into what that means. So in Grafana 12, we introduced new APIs for both dashboards and folders. And these APIs are standardized. So this not only makes it more predictable, but also makes it compatible for things like GetSync and Grafana CTL. These APIs are also schematized, so they have defined structure, which helps with that validation that you saw from Dominic on Grafana CTL, and will just help in general with better tooling and a more consistent experience. Also, these API schemas are added to API versions, and so you will know exactly when things are going to change in those APIs and when there are breaking changes from an API version bump. But this is just the start. We're going to continue to migrate more and more resources onto App Platform, and then all of the APIs across the Grafana ecosystem will become standardized, schematized, and versioned. And these versions are also tied to an API lifecycle. So in this API lifecycle, all of our APIs will start out in alpha. And this is where we're going to still be experimenting with things, and that may be a bit unstable, but then they're going to go into beta. And in beta is where they're a lot more tested, but there may still be some minor changes going forward. And then they'll go into stable. And in stable is where we're going to guarantee backwards compatibility, and any breaking change will be met with an API version bump, so you can start building on those APIs, knowing that they aren't just going to suddenly change from underneath you. So we talked about how dashboards and folders have been migrated onto App Platform in Grafana 12. But what does that really mean for you? So the old API will still be working, you can still be using those, but we also launched the V1 Beta 1, and that is for both folders and dashboards. But like Ryan said, for V1, for dashboards, it's still the same JSON that's going to be stored in the spec. There is a bit of validation, but it is not schema first. So for V2, we introduced that for dashboards, and that's where you can see what Dominic showed, where there's a lot more schema validation and just more consistent and deterministic and predictable dashboard specs. So this is what the APIs look like. So all of the APIs going forward will have the same structure. It'll start out with /APIs, and then it will be followed by the group. And the group is just a related functionality, so that can be dashboards, folders, alerting. Then it'll be followed by the version, followed by the namespace, and the namespace will either be your org ID or a stack ID if you are in cloud, and then that will be followed by the resource. So that's a core resource in Grafana that you want to interact with, whether that's dashboards or folders. And as you can see, looking between the two, they're the same CRUD endpoints as well, so the APIs are going to be much more consistent and deterministic. And we're going to continue to migrate more and more resources onto this /APIs pattern so that you can have these schematized and standardized and versioned APIs. But looking even further into the future, you will also be able to extend Grafana with these types of APIs, and then have the same as code support as Grafana CTL and with GetSync. And then additionally, you'll be able to watch for events throughout the ecosystem and see when things are changing. Also, your apps that you build on this will have access to everything that core Grafana has access to, like auth and like storage. And JP is going to talk about storage in a bit, but the key thing here is that you're going to be able to build really powerful apps within Grafana that are going to feel like first-class citizens, like dashboards and folders inside of Grafana. Now, the app SDK is in early development, but the storage layer is already powering GetSync, so let's hear from JP about that.
Cool, thank you. So unified storage. So unified storage is basically the new layer that we build to kind of power those new APIs that Stephanie just showed. It will become the default, and we're working really hard on that to make it the default in the future. So why did we build this new storage layer? Like, why did we not use like what we already have, right? Everybody of you is running Grafana. There's a database that we already store data into. So over the years, like the database of Grafana grew, like we got a lot of tables, as you can see, and it became really hard to maintain. Also, like all the data in those tables are unversioned, so we don't really have a schema for the data where we can say we can migrate from one version of the data to the other. And also, like Grafana is something really special. Like the Grafana instance usually have around like 50 megabytes of data in MySQL or in SQL in general. And that makes it kind of a bit like not a really good fit, like long-term, what we strategize for. So we have thought about like, how can we do this and how can we move forward with having like an easier way to approach how we store things. And especially also, how can we store, like, for example, what we now call Grafana apps inside of the Grafana storage. So right now, if you write a Grafana app, you would have to bring your own storage. But we want to kind of have like a unified storage experience for all the apps that you build on top of the Grafana platform. So what we came up with is something that we call unified storage. It's like a new layer, and all of Grafana will eventually use it, and all your apps can eventually use it. And the good thing is you will never need to kind of create a new table or new schema or bring your own storage. Another thing that's really cool about that is that unified storage makes Grafana more reactive. That means that with unified storage, your app can basically watch resources. For example, here in this example, we can, with the dashboard app, we can watch the folders app, and then as soon as a folder gets created, unified storage will basically tell the dashboard app that a new folder was created. And we can have basically the state of folders in the dashboard app. And that works for all the operations, right? Not only for create, but also for update and delete, an example. So you can basically have all the state you need in your app coming from Grafana. Now let's talk a bit about how do we get there. So what do we need to change? What changes have we already made? And so forth and so on. So like a high overview about what we did is basically you saw that we had all these tables on this one screenshot, and we basically went from like having all those tables to a more key value store approach. So basically now we have like one table that stores the current state of Grafana. So this table looks a bit like this as of today. It's still evolving, but that's like the first iteration. So we have a table that's called resource, and this resource table basically has the live snapshot of your Grafana state. And then we have a second table, which we call resource history. This one is pretty interesting because it will enable in the long run a lot of things. So resource history basically has a history of all the resources that you save in resource. And this all already works with the current infrastructure that you have. So you will have no need to kind of set up something new, like a new database, or update your database, or set up a messaging queue, and also works for all kind of setups. So for example, if you run it on a Raspberry Pi, or you run it like on a big deployment, we got you covered there. It shouldn't be a big difference. So let's talk a bit about what does this new storage architecture enable. Like, what are the features now that we can build on top of this that perhaps weren't like possible before, right? That's just a short sneak peek. We got more coming, but these are like the three big things we're really excited about. One is Git sync, so basically what Ryan and Dominic showed you, where you can basically synchronize any Git repository with your Grafana instance. This is completely built on top of unified storage, so unified storage is powering that. Another thing I'm personally really excited about is that we get like eventually unified search experience, which means like you will be able to search anything in Grafana, even things that are coming from third-party apps eventually, as we now control like the full storage there. So that's what I'm really excited about. Another thing, the global trash. So you will have like a global view of all the trash elements. And also with the resource history table, we will be able that you can restore every resource, the last 20 versions, that's the limit right now, from an old state. So basically right now this exists for dashboards, but it's coming for all the resources that we are supporting in Grafana. So now Stephanie will give us a recap.
Yeah, so we've covered a lot already with Dominic and Ryan and us. So let's recap what we've seen so far. So we've seen really cool as-code tooling with Git sync, with Grafana CTL, Foundation SDK. And all of that has been powered by App Platform. And so with App Platform, you're going to get these standardized, schematized, and versioned APIs. And Dominic showed you a bit about what that brings for dashboards specifically in V2. And all of that is going to be backed by the storage layer. And that storage layer has a lot of really cool functionality that we're going to be able to have, like global trash. And additionally, all of the storage is going to be able to have a lot of other things that we can build on for apps so that you can store your data for apps as well. And the reason that all of this matters is because of the really powerful and cool dashboards that you can create. And in Grafana 12, that has become even better. So let's welcome Bogdan and Thanos to the stage to see how that has improved.
Thank you.
Okay, so hello everyone. I am Bogdan. You probably saw me yesterday on stage talking about Doomfana. And today I came here on stage again to showcase everybody that Doomfana is not the only cool project I'm working on. I'm here with Thanos, Destroyer of Worlds, and today we're going to talk about dynamic dashboards. Thanos?
Thank you, Bogdan. I'm Thanos, and instead of holding my Thanos gauntlet, snapping out features, I was given this remote control. Felt inevitable. But let's get to the point. Grafana dashboards have certainly evolved over time. But honestly, some of the features, they didn't get as much love as they needed. Take rows, for example. We have introduced them way back in version 2 or 3, and they pretty much stayed the same ever since. Why? Partly because we have to keep things working across versions, and partly because the old rendering engine made it tough to improve them meaningfully. That's why last year we introduced Grafana scenes, dashboard scenes. So we migrated the dashboards into that new architecture. And this year, we have made these big 2 improvements. A new dashboard schema that Dominic and Ryan presented, and the fresh new APIs on top of the app platform that Stephanie and Jean-Philippe took us through. These form the base of the iceberg, unseen, but they support everything that we're going to talk with Bogdan today. But let's take a pause. Why we're doing those changes? Grafana dashboards can get big, pulling data from many different data sources, serving different types of users, and covering complex and diverse systems. Template variables and collapsible rows help, yes, but they often still have empty panels that can be confusing. Layouts often don't adapt well to different screen sizes, and navigation can be slow with too much scrolling, it's too much scrolling, and yeah, that's it really. So what we actually did here, we want to introduce tabs. Now dashboards support tabs in addition to rows. Tabs are so powerful and necessary for a well-structured dashboard. But it's not just that. We're not introducing just tabs. We now support different and nested layouts between tabs and rows that provide you the freedom to imagine ways of structuring your dashboards like never before in Grafana. Next thing is conditional logic. Simply, this is a very powerful feature. It lets you set conditions to panels or rows or tabs in order to show or hide them based on a variable value or when simply there is no data. And the last one is the auto layout. What makes conditional rendering and tabs possible is the powerful auto grid layout. It lets you set things like column width or row height, and it adjusts the layout automatically based on screen size and other conditions. Enough with the words, let's get with Bogdan for the demo.
Okay, let's switch to the demo. Okay, it should be switched anytime now. Alrighty, okay, there we go. So, in order to showcase the Infinity Stones that Thanos just presented, I'm gonna look a little bit over some dashboards that I currently have in my local Grafana instance. We can see that there is a folder called Integration Linux Node. Well, This folder is created automatically whenever you use the Linux Node integration. This is one of our most powerful, most used, and more complex integration that we provide. And if we expand this folder, we can see that there are a lot, and I mean a lot of dashboards. I can count 7, I think. So even though this worked fine until now, the navigation between these dashboards is a little bit cumbersome. If we go to Fleet Overview, and this is the first dashboard that a user should look over when they go to the Linux integration dashboards. I can select an instance, and then I'm going to be taken to another dashboard, and I'm going to see an overview of that instance, and then I'm going to go navigate back. And for example, if I want to see advanced memory information, I need to navigate back to my dashboards list, and so on and so forth. Well, we do present some, we do add some links to those dashboards, and they help a little bit, but that's not enough. So let's see how we can actually leverage dynamic dashboards to minimize the interactions, or to reduce the number of steps that users have to take whenever they actually want to do an investigation. So I'm going to navigate to this Linux Node dashboard that I have right here. And I want to tell you that this dashboard combines all 7 dashboards into only one. That's right, 7 dashboards in only one. So I'm loading this dashboard, and I can just, scroll, and it's the same fleet management overview dashboard that we had previously. The column, the panels are aligned the same, but there is only one small difference, and that is this little thing right here. Well, for now, it's just standalone because the other tabs are not visible. And what I mean by that is whenever I select an instance, there is another tab appearing. So this is achieved by combining the features of tabs and conditional rendering. You may wonder, how does conditional rendering work? What's that? Well, allow me to actually enter the edit mode. We switch the little edit button to a switch here. So this is the new edit mode. And the first thing that you will notice is the side pane. We added this side pane to allow quicker editing of various UI elements. So if I select my instance tab and I look here over the show hide rules, this is where we added the conditional rendering, we can see that we have the possibility of either showing a tab or hiding the tab depending on some rules. My current rule is if selected instance equals all, that means we don't have a specific instance selected. We have all the instances selected. That means the tab will not be visible. It was not visible in the beginning. If I click on add rule, I can say, for example, another condition, time range less than. What this means is that, for example, if my time range, selected time range, right now you can see last 30 minutes, it's, for example, less than 7 days, don't show the panel, or show the panel depending on what we have here. Now, we can see that when I added the second rule, there is this match rules section added right here. What this is, it allows you to switch between either matching all the rules at once or matching any rule. So this panel would be hidden if template variable and time range less than rules are actually respected, or if I select match any, it's going to check if either template variable or the time range conditions are matched. Okay, we talked about tabs, we talked about conditional rendering, we didn't talk about rows. So rows, it's one of those features that have been added in Grafana version 2, 3, something like that. And we didn't do a lot of changes to them since then. Okay, they are repeatable, you can, but they do have some quirks. And that is, for example, if you want to move a row, or if you want to rearrange a row, you need to actually first collapse it and then move it. Or if you want to add a panel, that row has to be expanded. So because we are using the previous schema, and because we wanted to maintain the backwards compatibility, we never did a lot of changes to those. But right now, we are introducing a new type of rows, and these rows are a little bit different from the previous ones. Okay, they kind of act the same. They encapsulate panels, but these rows are not tied to what we used to call the custom grid. So the initial grid in Grafana was called custom grid. Now, each row can be either a custom grid, can be an auto grid, it can contain other rows, it can contain other tabs, like we see here. So rows can be extremely well used to actually combine multiple types of layouts and organize my panels better. So this can be seen here if we look over row 1 and row 2. These rows have their headers hidden. If we hover, we can see that those rows have their header hidden. And one row organizes the panels free on a row, and the second one are only 2 panels on a row. Well, if I exit the edit modes, I can see that this section right here seems like there is only one grid, but there are actually 2 grids. And this is what I want to present you next. Grids. Thanos mentioned the auto grid. I mentioned it as well. What is the auto grid and how does it differ from the custom grid? Well, we all know Grafana, you create a dashboard, you go there and you just place your panels, you resize them. But that process sometimes can be extremely cumbersome. That is because, well, you want to focus on your queries, you want to focus on your data. You don't want to focus on aligning panels. You may want to actually set, okay, I want up to 4 panels on a row, and I want them to be narrow, or I want them to be, I don't know, wide. And I want my dashboarding system to actually take care of the positioning of my panels. So this is exactly what AutoGrid is. If I select the overview here, we can see that right now we have maximum 4 columns per row. If I set this to 3, then I'm going to have only 3 rows, only 3 panels per row. But if I resize this, we can see that these get pretty small because I selected them to be narrow. For standard and for this screen size, they are gonna be a little bit bigger. So AutoGrid allows us to actually just focus on writing queries, focus on the data, and I don't want to think, and I'm not forced to think about how I want to place my panels. Well, one more thing. Thanos did nothing wrong, but he forgot to mention only one useful feature. I mentioned 7 dashboards in one. That means a lot of panels. How can I navigate through my dashboard while I'm editing it to find my panels super fast? For that, I'm gonna actually leverage the outline feature that we added, which allows us to actually go to my dashboard elements extremely fast. So for example, if I want to go over the CPU usage panel, I'm gonna expand the instance tab here, I'm gonna go over overview, I'm gonna navigate to CPU, expand overview again, and I'm gonna select the CPU usage here. Well, I can also rename it super fast, and mainly, these are the new things that we added to dynamic dashboards. AutoGrid, custom grid, which is the previous Grafana grid, tabs, rows, outline, edit pane, and there are much, much more features to come. And with this, I'm going to pass it back to Thanos, and I think we should switch back to slides.
Thank you, Bogdan. So 7 dashboards into one using AutoGrid, conditional logic, and tabs. These are just some of the highlights, and we do have many more exciting features that to expand that we're coming along. Dynamic dashboards are experimental, so test them just in dev. And with this, let me pass the mic to Mihaela and Mitch.
Now, I know we spent a lot of time in this session, but this is not it. So raise your hand if you think you're going to use dynamic dashboards after this. Yeah!
That was louder than I expected, sorry.
That's awesome. We hope you're just as excited about the things we're going to talk about next as well. So Mitch and I are back to close off Grafana 12 with some of our favorite features, and even going hands-on to show you how it all works, because all these live demos have gone so well, right? Now, for this next part, I'm going to play the role of a Grafana user. I've done that one before, to show you what we're doing to make it easier than ever to pull all your data together and keep your systems healthy, really.
Great. And then I'll join in as the platform engineer and resident cat person who's responsible for the observability platform itself. And I'm going to be talking about what we're doing to make it easier for administrators and operators of Grafana to pull all of your teams together onto a complete and enterprise-grade observability platform.
And of course, we're trying to divide the crowd between cat lovers and dog lovers. It's clear what we love, right?
Yeah. You should all meet Jacob the cat.
Now, let's jump in and take a look at how Grafana 12 brings more power and flexibility to our users in this one pane of glass. So yesterday in the keynote, David announced that we have 15 new data sources. Well, if you didn't know, that's more data sources than in the past few years combined. And these new data sources extend Grafana's usefulness in more areas, like CI/CD and web platforms, connecting to your incident management, support, and analytics, connecting to other observability tools and databases as well. Now, instead of talking through more slides, how about we take a risk and we go into some live demos? So I introduced to you Super Pets. If I ever had a side gig, it would be related to pets. I love my 2 dogs to bits, and life would be really boring without them. But of course, I'm an engineer at heart, so this is a high-tech operation. I have automated my stock management, my supplier connections, I have automated pickers and packaging, all of that. And of course, I'm using Grafana to monitor my system. Now, what you can see here is the main dashboard that I use to just have a look at the most critical parts of my business. This is the one that I use day to day. The first panel that you see here, I want to tell you a story. So one of my supplier systems is very flaky. It always goes down. And because, I'm this techie, I've actually connected my system to theirs. So because of this integration, whenever their system goes down, it takes mine down too. That's a big problem. So I need to keep an eye on it. So thanks to the new Atlassian status page data source, I can keep an eye on it straight in my dashboard. I know everything is working, right? So if we look at it here, thankfully it's working, so we can go through with this demo. Now next, I want us to talk about data visualizations and actions. So last year, I did a demo for you where I showed you in Canvas panel a server that I could use actions on to turn on and off. This year, we introduced supercharged actions for you. So what you can see in this panel at the top is a list of my automated pickers. They're awesome. They make life even much easier for my business. However, they're quite flaky, like anything else. So I need to keep a constant eye on them, and also sometimes they'll get stuck. They'll turn off, and I need to sort them out pretty quickly. And of course, you can see here, some of them are off. So let's try and do the usual turn it off and on again and see if that fixes it. Let's try and restart one of them. All right, that worked. I'm back in business. I, of course, have a few more to sort out. But you might wonder, OK, well, how do we do this? So let's have a look. I'm going to go to my overrides. So you can see here that I've set up the 2 actions that you can see on screen as well. And the way it works is that it makes a put request to this endpoint that I've defined in my particular situation with the picker ID and whatever the relevant information to restart it. Now, I can take unauthenticated actions now from any data source. Now, not only have they expanded, they are now also generally available. What that means is that they are safe to use in production and they are fully supported. Now, the options are endless here, right? Like, I can do more and more from my dashboard without having to switch to other systems to take the actions I need to take. I can just focus on this one view. Not only that, but I can do other things, right? So I can order more stock, let's say. I can move stock around. There's really a lot that I can do using actions. Now, talking about stock, this month I did a stock take. I wanted to see what inventory I have in my imaginary warehouse. I have these very funky manual scanners that I use, they are great when I'm doing it. However, they dump me the raw data, and it ends up quite messy. So what I've done in this panel here is I've used 6 transformations to clean up the data. So I have various missing values and the like, so I had to layer some transformations to make it make sense. So that made me wonder, could I use Grafana 12 to make it easier than this? To go through the data and just get my stock totals? That's all I want, right? So let's give it a go. So if we add a new visualization, I'm going to get my data quickly. Now, I don't need this query, because I'm going to take advantage of this new enterprise feature called the query library. So what I'm doing is I'm loading a query that I've saved previously, and I know it has all my data. I love it. I'm glad you do too. OK, so now you can see what I meant about the data, right? So I do have various bits of data missing. So this is what I want to sort out before I get to my totals. So let's use SQL expressions to do exactly that. So I'm going to add an expression, go to SQL, and you can see that it pre-populates a very simple query. What you can see here is that it uses the query names to refer to as the table in the particular query. And I'm going to remove this limit because I don't need it, and we're just going to run it. Now, when you do that, it creates another frame of data. So if you don't want to see this, all you need to do is to hide the first query. There we are. So we're seeing the data that we could see before. Let's just imagine we wanted to just get our product data so I can quickly show you how we can tidy it up. So let's just get our product ID and our product name. I think that's right. There we go. Now you can see what I meant. So I have, for example, product IDs that repeat themselves, right, as I was scanning in the warehouse. So let's just pick up the distinct ones. And of course, you can see my spelling now as well, so I'm going to sort that out. There we go. All right, so now I have my distinct product IDs, but you can see I'm missing some product names here and there. This data has a lot of that. So I could just quickly remove those. Oop. I hope you can hear my furious typing. There we go. So now I have a list of the products that I've scanned, and it's working. Now, Grafana is really great at querying already. So why not use this well-known language, right? I expect most of us got to play with it at least one point in our careers, to manipulate the data and get it to the shape that you want it to be. Now, to truly show you what this is capable of, I'm going to use this pre-prepared query. Now, don't be fooled. I did not write this from scratch. The benefit here is SQL is pretty well known. There's a lot of information online about it. So you can use your favorite LLM to generate you the query. And of course, starting yesterday, that's Grafana Assistant, right? So that's exactly what I've done here. I did not write this from scratch. Thanks to AI, someone can just do it for me, and then I make sure it works. So this query doesn't do crazy amounts, but it does clean up the products that don't have a name. It cleans up the accounts that are empty, and it groups my information. If we just refresh this, there you go. So what I got to is exactly what I had before with my layered transformations. Now, you could sit and wonder, well, OK, so you're showing me basically the same results. So why would I choose this approach in favor of the other? Well, one benefit is that with transformations, you many times end up layering transformation on top of transformation on top of transformation. That's doable, I've done it. But if anything changes, it's very hard to troubleshoot and evolve it. So with this, I can just use a few lines of SQL to make it do what I need it to do, and I can evolve it easily. Now, more importantly, SQL expressions are run in the backend. So that means they work for all backend data sources, and they will work with alert rules and recording rules, which is something that didn't work before. So let's have a go at that. So if I just go to this panel, to the menu, I can create a new alert rule. I want to save this dashboard quickly. There we go. So we're creating a new alert rule. You can see that data has been pulled through, but the expression has as well. So I can create a new alert rule with this manipulated data, right? And I can even manipulate it further and preview. In this case, apparently it would be firing, but of course I need to do something more clever to have an alert on my stock. There we go. So now what I've showed you is a very basic example of what SQL expressions can do. Like, it has a lot of potential for complex processing. So whether you're trying to merge your analytics, similar to the example that we saw yesterday in the keynote, I'm merging data from multiple locations, or you're trying to clean up your data to answer the most critical questions in your business, this is what SQL expressions are for. Now, they're available in private preview right now, and we're, of course, working on them to get them out to general availability as well. What we're inviting you to do is to try them out in your dev environments and give us feedback. Now, before I go back to my slides, you would have noticed by now that I have some funky coloring scheme in my Grafana. That's because my favorite theme is Tron. And I promise you, it's David that copied me for the keynote, not the other way around. Now we can go back to slides, please. Now, I love Harry Potter, but I don't know what the spell is to make this happen. So, there we go. Now, every year at GrafanaCon, we come and we talk to you about new things. But it's also about better, and better, right? And you saw an example of that in the keynote yesterday, where David spoke to you about 2 performance improvements. That was our blazing fast new table and the new select combo box. Now, I get the pleasure of showing you yet another. So what you can see here is a performance improvement on our GeoMap panel. I'm actually really excited I picked this one, because I've already seen GeoMap panel on a bunch of our speakers' slides yesterday, so I hope this benefits all of you. So what you can see here is before is us loading 10,000 styled markers, and you can see it loading the data. Whereas now, thanks to WebGL with 1 million styled markers, you can barely see it loading. I mean, not only that, but you can't see the map for the data points, but Now, SuperPets is working great. Thank you. Now, SuperPets is working great. I'm keeping an eye on my supplier systems. I can order more stock if I need to. I'm keeping an eye on my robo pickers. Everything is great. Not only that, but I get to dust off my SQL skills and manipulate my data so I can rationalize my stock. But this business isn't just built on my sweat and tears. Thanks to Mitch, our platform engineer, I have a working observability platform at all times.
I've been sweating and crying all day. So, yeah, this business, like we mentioned, is built on the backs, and Grafana is built on the backs of administrators who are working hard to keep their systems healthy. So how do I make Mihaila's life easier is the question, and also save myself a little bit of toil in the process? The challenge is, basically, as I think many of you experienced today, maybe this morning, is as usage of Grafana grows within my org, I can actually start to feel like a bit of a victim of my own success. I have a lot more teams to support, I have more dashboards, a mix of different kinds of alerts running around in my instance, lots of users coming in and out. And what we'd like to do here in Grafana 12 is help you tidy things up a little bit with some Grafana 12 improvements. The first one, now this topic has really been beaten to death, but it continues to be extremely important. As a platform engineer, of course, I'm excited about observability as code, like Ryan and Dominic talked about before. The first thing that I would probably do is set up Git sync so that Mihaila and her team can keep their dashboards backed up and version controlled. So next, let's talk about alerting. We mentioned that we're migrating from data source managed alerting rules to Grafana managed alerting rules. To understand a little bit more the difference between these 2 types, a lot of you use Prometheus, Mimir, and Loki to evaluate your alerts, in addition to storing your metrics, logs, and traces. And we've done that for years as well with Alert Manager. However, what we've been doing, and with patterns very consistent with Alert Manager, is developing Grafana managed alerts to address some important gaps you've noticed. We're really excited that Grafana managed alerts are a superset of data source managed alerts. So first thing is they work with any data source. So you don't have to store your metrics in Prometheus or Loki in order to alert on them. The second is they support fine-grained access control. For example, you can control who can see versus who can edit alerts, or even contact points. Then the alert authoring experience is also quite a lot simpler, as I'm going to show you in just a second. We have some additional contact points. So in this demo, I'm going to walk through three things, starting with alerts, like I just mentioned, and then moving on to how we're here to help you effortlessly manage plugin versions for all the plugins you're running in Grafana, and then help you sync users and teams straight to your Grafana instance using Skim. All right, switch over to demo, please. The screen I'm going to pop up is the alert rules screen in Grafana 12, which has some nice improvements. So on the top, I see my Grafana managed alerts as before, and down below, I can see my data source managed alerts. These ones all live in Prometheus. You can already see some of the differences, like these Grafana managed alerts are organized into folders, which is just a handy way to keep them organized. When I click into view one of these alerts, I can see its status history, which is just really nice if I want to know what's been happening with that alert over a period of time. I can also see its version history in Grafana 12, or I can see where people have actually changed this alert rule itself, compare versions, and even restore one if I need to. When I go in to edit these alert rules, I just get some really nice quality of life improvements. Like I can preview these alert rules and iterate a little bit on the query, or I get simplified notification routing. So in Prometheus managed alerts, I need to assign labels, use notification policies in order to route to contact points. But in the simplest case, I just want to make sure these alerts go to a specific contact point. There are also some new contact points we use in Grafana managed alerts, like Google Chat and MQTT. Another thing I'm very excited about and have been using myself is Grafana managed recording rules. Now, these are recording rules like you'd be familiar with in Prometheus alerting, but they work with any data source. This is really handy in situations where maybe I want to create a time series out of a value that I can only get at a single point in time. So for example, if I wanted to track the number of PRs that are open in the Grafana repo over time, I can't get that information from GitHub, but I can use a recording rule to ping GitHub periodically and give me back a time series. Another really nice use of recording rules is that for queries that take a while to run, or queries where maybe I get charged per query, I can create a recording rule to generate a time series and store it in Prometheus, and then I only have to execute that big query once, and I can run the recording rule over and over again. So just to summarize, Grafana managed recording rules are a superset of data source managed recording rules and alert rules, and we recommend that everybody use them right away. They're generally available. But right, I'm sitting here in an instance that has a whole bunch of Prometheus alert rules, so how do I move those over? And for that, we've built an import tool. This is in the UI, and it's also available via API. So here I'll grab my Prometheus data source, which is where my alert rules live today. Prepped a migrated alert rules folder, and let's move over some Redis alert rules. The default option is to import these as paused, which we'd recommend. It's handy so that your alerts don't fire twice. Import those. I have the option here actually to just copy out the config information and provision it back in if I prefer to do this all as code, but I'll do it here in the UI. And once they're migrated over, I see they're paused. My next steps would be to route these to a test contact point, make sure that they work, and then I can retire the old alerts. So it's pretty handy and easy to migrate over. This is definitely something we recommend you take a look at as soon as you upgrade to Grafana 12. Next up is data source plugin management. So Mihailo, you talked about, was it 15, 19?
15.
Many new data sources. I'm excited about Atlassian status page and a bunch of the new ones. Data sources, if you're not familiar, are implemented as plugins, which means that they're code that's separate from Grafana's core that runs alongside it. And that's great because it means any of us can create plugins and use them in Grafana. We can also version them separately, so make improvements independently of Grafana core. But as every operator knows, this creates a problem, and the problem is a compatibility matrix. So in the past, one of the biggest causes of issues in Grafana has been when people are trying to run a specific version of Grafana with a specific version of a plugin, or two different versions of plugins against each other, and this just creates a lot of complexity. So last year, we set out to improve the way that we test end-to-end our plugins against different versions of Grafana. And this year, we set out to give you a handful of tools to basically make sure that your plugins are always up to date and know what their dependencies are. So in the connections page, when I look at my list of data sources, One nice kind of handy new thing is that I can install a plugin just directly from within the Grafana UI. This is just a lot easier than what I needed to do previously, which was to go to grafana.com and install the plugins from there. You also notice these little icons next to each data source plugin. That indicates whether the plugin is up to date or whether it needs an update. And I can even filter just for plugins that need an update. So I'll click into GitHub, check out its version history, and I can upgrade or even downgrade just directly within the UI, which is just a much easier way for me to make sure my plugins are up to date. The other nice little touches in this plugins page is that I can see the changelog, so I can see what changes I'm actually upgrading to. I can see all the data source connections connected to this plugin. So this GitHub is a data source that uses the GitHub plugin, and a bunch of other handy information about dependencies, where to go for documentation, or to ask for help. So this is basically a grand central station now for managing plugins, and it's just a much smoother experience. One other thing I wanted to introduce you to is the Grafana Advisor. I say there are 3 hard things in software development, and naming things is one of them. The Grafana Advisor is different from the Grafana Assistant. The Assistant is our new AI tool, and the Advisor is a tool specifically for admins to see any issues that might be happening in their instances. We started with data source plugin issues, but we're looking to expand this out to other issues like auth or dashboard problems. So the kinds of things that I can see here are issues with my data sources that are failing their health checks. So I can see which data sources have problems that I can go and resolve. I can resolve those and then come back later. I can see which data sources are missing their relevant plugins. And I can even see, once again, which plugins need an upgrade. So we're really looking to expand this experimental feature, the Advisor, and we think it's going to be handy for admins who want to keep Grafana clean and up to date. The last thing that I wanted to show you is an area near and dear to my heart, which is in the area of auth, and that is Skim. It has nothing to do with milk. Skim is a feature in auth. It works with SAML. It works right now with SAML Okta and Azure Active Directory, which allows you to push users and groups from your identity provider straight into Grafana. And I'll, returning to Super Pets for our example, let's say that Mihaila just added 3 new warehouses to her growing business. Those warehouses are staffed by people who we just added to our system, and I don't have teams or users created in Grafana for those. That's because I have to manually create those teams if I want them to exist in Grafana, and those users actually have to log in order to exist in the database. This makes it really hard for me to do things like add them to on-call schedules or grant them the right permissions. The Skim solves this problem by allowing me to go straight into my identity provider, where, yeah, of course, in Okta, I've already onboarded these users and created these teams. But I can pick my application. This Grafana 12 demo kit is my Grafana instance. I can choose which groups I want to push or even use a rule. So like if I want to add these warehouse teams, all the teams that start with the word warehouse should exist in Grafana. And in my teams, they're created automatically along with all of their members. This is just very handy for smoothly onboarding new people. So I can go back to my schedules, quickly associate those schedules with these teams after I refresh my page. And then I'm off to the races. That means these users could actually discover Grafana and start using it as a result of getting notified for something going on in their warehouse. So it's just a really handy feature and a quality of life improvement for onboarding new teams. Great, and with that, we'll return to the slides. Some of you might recognize the slide that's about to pop up on the screen from last year, where we presented another incremental step. I think this is the final step, so I'm curious who's going to recognize this slide. We've been replacing AngularJS with React for a long time. We've been officially using React for over 2 years now in the Grafana code base. And in Grafana 11 last year, we turned off support by default for AngularJS. So in Grafana 12, we're very excited. I see Torkel in the front row, and maybe more excited than anybody else, that we finally removed these thousands of lines of Angular code from our code base. This is really exciting to us because Angular has been out of maintenance for a long time. And so this is a great security upgrade and a sort of a final step in a very long process. What do you need to do for this? Probably nothing. Angular's been off for a while, so just make sure your plugins are up to date and you've migrated off of old versions of those plugins, especially panels that use AngularJS. So we want to say thank you again to all of the plugin developers who updated a ton of third-party plugins in a big effort to migrate to React. And we want to say so long to Angular, and thanks for all the two-way bindings. So that was a lot. Yeah, it's funny, it takes 90 minutes just to say the names of all the features that we worked on this year.
Yeah, we talked about, Git Sync, Foundation SDK, Grafana CTL, all of this built on new APIs on the app platform. We also talked about dynamic dashboards and how you can do more with fewer dashboards. And we got to cover some of the landmark improvements in this release as well, from data sources to SQL expressions to improvements to Grafana managed alerts, and of course, Mitch's favorite, Skim.
And all this comes together in a release that's going to help you to onboard teams more smoothly into a very powerful observability platform, which then you can customize to your heart's content.